Hello, Fuel Milwaukee. Hey, Fuelers, I see you coming in the space. Come on in. Welcome to today's Race Bridge conversation. We've been doing these every Thursday for close to 3 months now. So excited to have this conversation. We're talking about what it's like to be Hispanic, Latinx in America, Milwaukee, the world. We have a great panel of folks that are going to give us their perspectives and help elevate our understanding of the brown experience. We often say black and brown together, kind of combine them in a lot of these conversations we've been having. Black and brown people, black and brown people. Those of you who were with us last Thursday know that we had a conversation about Breonna Taylor and had a panel of all Black women. I recently met my co-host for today and was inspired by conversations that I had with her to do what we're doing today, this conversation. Very inspired by that discussion. So I think we're all going to learn a lot, and I'm excited to learn a lot and meet some great new people. So again, welcome to today's Race Bridge. For those who don't know me, I'm Corey Jo Biddle. I'm the executive director for Fuel Milwaukee. Listen, let me tell you a little bit about this great panel we got here, right? So my co-host, Lucia. Hey, Lucia.
Hey, Corey.
I'm going to say your whole name now because the last name
ready.
got me. Lucia Losa Gelzewski.
Perfect.
Gelzewski. Yes. I'm proud of myself. So I wanted to make sure I said that. So listen, Lucia is the president of the Latinx Professional Network at Rockwell Automation, in addition to being a global finance partner at Rockwell. She recently invited me to be a part of a webinar that the Professional Network had, and I was really inspired by that discussion to get to know her more and to have this discussion. So Lucia, thank you.
Thank you, Corey.
So she's gonna be my co-host today. She's gonna, listen, I'm gonna just put it on cruise control today. I'm gonna sit back and let her take over and enjoy the discussion. Next up, we have Yusef Morales, who is the Community Outreach Coordinator for America Works. Hey, Yusef, thank you so much for being here.
How you doing? Thank you for having me so much. I'm excited to be here.
So glad. Those of you who have been hanging out with Fuel know that Samantha Maldonado is one of my favorite people. She's been on one of our webinars before. Samantha is the consulting partner and principal for Pinpoint Solutions Milwaukee. She's out here strategizing and organizing and managing and D&I and the whole bit. So Samantha, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. And again, to what we just said before, learning from others on this panel and sharing, little other perspectives. So thank you.
Absolutely. So this is my girl right here. Like we office out of the same place. We've lunched together. We've been on panels together. I mean, we're like besties. Andrea Mendez Barrutia is the Community Outreach Director for the Hispanic Collaborative, that is in the same space that MMAC is. So Fuel Milwaukee is an initiative of MMAC, and the Hispanic Collaborative is one of our affiliates in MMAC. So we're in the same house, Andrea.
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Glad to have you here. Couldn't have this discussion without you, girl. Needed you here. Alberto Maldonado is the director of the Roberto Hernandez Center at UW Milwaukee. Alberto, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Gracias for including me in this great panel. A lot of great and familiar faces. I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you. Some of you might be wondering about this exciting white wall that's behind me. I have to turn the camera. I keep telling you guys this because I'll show you. I never show you, but I'll show you. Can you see that view?
Wow.
Very nice.
It's beautiful. So I'm at Spaces right now because the MMAC is moving, and we're moving to the Avenue, and we're in between homes right now. So this is our temporary home. Spaces has been kind enough to open up their doors to us because we've been doing webinars on the Fuel side and the MMAC side. I'm not angled in the coolest way, but this is a beautiful space. So if you're also looking for office space and maybe you just want to change of scenery, want to get out the house, contact Spaces, take a look at this. It's beautiful. You won't regret taking a look at this place. Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing so we can look at the full panel. You guys look great. You look great. So listen, I'm gonna start off the conversation similar to the way that the panel I was on with Lucia, they kind of started it off. If you could use one word to explain what your heritage means to you, what would that be? So we'll get started with that. And as you're doing that, I want people that are participating, we got almost 200 participants, go in the chat, guys, go in the chat. I want you to take control of that chat, interact with each other. We'll have the panelists jumping in there and interacting with you too. What is the one word you would use to describe your experience, what you know about, what you love about Hispanic and Latinx people? I'm gonna start with my co-host Lucia, and then we can go around from there.
Yeah, thank you, Corey. So yeah, so this is a conversation. This is more of a mesa roja, right? The red table talk. So
Right.
I would say that being a Latina, one of the things that I'm mostly proud of is that leadership with el corazón, with the heart. And we are grounded and rooted in generations and generations that made sacrifices for us. Especially the Latinos that are here in the U.S., you know, there are great love stories, immigration stories that got us here, of pure sacrifice. So there is an intense love, a leadership that is driven by love, not necessarily by the task. So it's passion and love is what allows us to create those channels in the community, to have these type of conversations, to listen and to really appreciate that diversity within our own Latinx or Latino community. So I would say that's my favorite thing, is that I'm a proud leader with a heart. So I think the next one is Andrea.
So my heritage to me, and I'm going to kind of sum it up in a word, is home. And I don't know if I'm saying that because I'm tuning in from my original hometown of San Antonio, Texas, but it's warm, it's inviting, and I love it. And I think, you know, mi casa es tu casa comes from, you know, that love and just that heart that we have for our community and for our family and just in those in it.
Alberto, do you want to take it?
Yeah.
Sure. I think for me, when I think of it, and wow, it's so hard to pick one word, but you know, my heritage, it's my catalyst, right? It's almost like the foundation and the motivation of who I am, what I am, and for whom I am, right? My children, my community, my wife, my students, my colleagues. So it's all sort of encapsulated into that. So it's like that fuel, you know, for me, and has always been. And there's not a day that goes by that I think of my ancestors, my grandfathers, the island that I left behind, and you know, the sacrifices like Lucia mentioned that were, you know, made for me to be who I am and where I am today.
Alberto. Sam.
Okay. So yeah, same to Alberto, it's hard to just choose one word because there's just so much depth, right? So if I had to try and choose one, and I'm not necessarily always a person of few words, but if I had to choose one, I would say blended, right? So for those that may not know me, my mom was born in Peru. My dad is Milwaukee born, German and Polish, right? And even on my mom's side, I have ancestry in Italy. So I could legitimately get both an Italian and Peruvian passport if I wanted. And so for me, blended in regards of knowing how to adapt, knowing how to welcome, knowing how to approach different cultures and integrate them into who I am. And just appreciating all of that, right? So, you know, experiencing Christmas a little bit different between different sides of the family, right? But knowing how to still envelop it into the full version of who you are, right? You're not one thing or another, but all of those experiences, all of that depth, all of that culture, all that history is really what makes me me. So when I see, you know, another Polish person like my cousin who looks nothing like me, but they're blood, you know, that's family. But when I see another Peruvian that I may not be related to, they're a paisa right in that same second. So it's really finding that way to blend that experience and that history and that culture together and embracing it. So I would say blend is possibly the best word for me at the moment. And you,
That's good.
Yusuf, you're
That's
next.
good.
I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to use two words. To me, it's overcoming adversity. Just those two words for me. As a young Puerto Rican that came here from Puerto Rico when I was about 11 years old, we came here with nothing. We were the first ones here from our family. We were one of those families that, didn't live in the best neighborhoods. We lived about 15 of us in one house. My mom came in here with pretty much nothing, and not just that, just going through the years and through the history from Puerto Rico, from the hurricanes, and so many things that we've gone through. I think that's what, for my culture, that's what I'm so proud of, and what kind of represents me every day is just using those struggles and things that we came from, and that's kind of what makes us as Hispanic and Latinos so strong. I think those adversities we go through is what makes us these Latinos, Hispanics, Latinx, whatever you want to call us. I think no matter if we were born here, and we are Latinos, Hispanics, our cousins, our uncles, our parents, somebody went through that. Somebody had to overcome that adversity for us to keep going. So I think that's what what's for me is just that struggle. I just embrace it, and I think that's what makes what I love so much about being Puerto Rican and Hispanic.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I think, everybody kind of brought in so much, like, we're going to be drinking from a fire hose here, but just so much. I'm thinking of like, oh my gosh, got diversity. Oh my goodness, we have to talk about Latinx and Hispanic. So let's kind of peel the onion. Because I know that a lot of our audience is probably not Latinos or Latinas or Latinx, and they're probably wondering like, okay, what I don't want to offend anybody. What can I or should I call? So anybody who wants to talk about the Latina, Latino, Latinx, and Hispanic, how can we confuse our audience even more?
Hey, Lucia, let me add the element. Yeah. Let's just get all into the identity piece, because it's do I say Latino, Latina, Latinx? Do I say Hispanic? What's the difference between the two? And Black, Hispanic, white, Hispanic, ethnicity, race. How do you guys sort of communicate with your identity, with yourself, about how you identify as yourself, and how do you communicate that to other people?
I think those terms, are often used interchangeably. I just want to sort of, do a little bit of education on the Latinx piece, because it's something that more often we're hearing, and folks are including that in their language and their interactions, and basically it's an inclusive term used to include all gender and non-gender identities of peoples of Latin American countries, and specifically to refuse to further silence and erase trans and non-binary and binary gender, non-conforming, non-binary, and genderqueer people. So it's a very complex, but at the same time what it aims at is at being inclusive. I personally use all terms interchangeably, right? I do want to be inclusive, and I want to be sensitive to all communities that are represented under the Latino community, right? And so that's my perspective on it. I consider myself as a Latino, right? So and I know the term Hispanic is often used and national acronyms and federally, in federal areas of the country and whatnot. So I use it interchangeably, but I think understanding what Latinx means, so people have a more profound understanding of what it aims to do, rather than, oh, here's a new term that just came in and it's the trendy thing to do. No, it's the sort of the meaning behind that carries a lot of meaning and value, right?
If I may, what I've also heard to help decipher between the two is Hispanic is for Hispanic speaking countries, right? So that wouldn't include
language,
Portuguese or Brazil, right? So for Latino, though, that's including everyone that identifies as Latino. So that's how I've understood the difference, right? So you could be Latino or Latinx from Portuguese and Brazil, but you're not Hispanic because you're not speaking Spanish from kind of as the genesis of Spain. So that's how I've heard it, used differently if you needed to have some sort of a differential, but Latinx would include all of it.
So yeah, Latino is from the Latin American countries, which would not include Spain. Hispanic does include Spain. And then, yeah, I think Latinx, I think we started hearing that word first in academia. And so I think that there is some polarization sometimes where people, you know, that was not maybe the name that they grew up with and they don't feel connected to it. So the more terms you can use, the better. You know, I personally self-identify as Latina, Chicana, you know, Mexican American. So, you know, there's all that context, but I think some of it's generational, some of it's geographical, and using all the terms is probably the most inclusive way you can be.
And I think,
Well,
go ahead.
yeah, go ahead, Lucia.
No, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say I'm one of the persons, I proudly always use Latino and Latina. I know that it is for gender neutral. Latinx is a gender neutral word. And I'm kind of getting more used to it as we're using it more, as I'm in the corporate setting. I personally don't like it. I have this pride when I say that I'm a Latino. Like, I just feel it in my chest. I can feel it in my heart when I say Latino. When I do anything and I see a proud Latina, you know, it's just, there's no feeling that you get when you're a Latino, a Latina. And like Andrea said, I think it's that connection that I have with the word. And again, that adversity that's behind it. And I just think that Latinox, and like I said, I'm getting used to it now. I don't use it personally and I won't use it personally, but I do accept it and I do respect the word. You know, but again, I think I'm one of those persons. I prefer you call me Latino, you call me Hispanic, you call me Puerto Rican, you call me American. I just don't like the word Latinx, but I am starting to get used to hearing it more and accepting it more. I was one of those people that would be on Facebook all the time. Oh, I hate the word. I hate Latinx. And I really was. And I would get 100 people on there arguing with me. You said, what's wrong with you? Oh, this. The gay community, and you know, I have a gay brother myself, which I love to death, and we and him have had this conversation, and he always tells me, I'm a Latina at night, I'm a Latino during the day, but that's what I am. And that's kind of and it's kind of the understanding where me and him are like, all right, you get me, it's the pride thing. Like, yeah. I love being a Latino. It's just, it's hard to, with the Latinos on board right now, I'm sure you guys understand what I'm saying when you feel that pride when you say Latino.
Yes. I mean, we have Proyecto Uno. Like, that was one of my favorite songs in the 90s, singing Latinos, and like all of us would dance to that song, and there's just like so much pride, or with the gozadera, or with, I mean, there's just so much pride with that word. What is unique, though, is that, so I wasn't born here in the United States. I was born in Quito, Ecuador. So yay to the 5 Ecuadorians in Milwaukee. But hopefully someday we will put a restaurant together. But anyway, so with the, when I came to the United States, right, now I have to fill a box. I have to fill a box that is like, okay, are you white? Are you black? And are you Hispanic? Are you Latino? And like now they like keep adding forms. Now I have 2 children that are black, and 2 children that one of them identifies himself as Latino. The other one's like white Latino. Sometimes he calls himself pan blanco. So, so that conversation has, you know, has brought up, you know, the difference between 2 races. So being Latino is not a race. We have Latinos or Afro Latinos, and they experience a different set of challenges just through that intersectionality. And there's also white Latinos, especially white male Latinos, that, you know, can hide the Latinidad. You know, they probably have a little bit more privilege that they need to recognize because of how they are viewed, or like optically how they are walking into a room. So I would say for the audience, for the non-Latinx audience, or Latinos or Latina audience, you know, what they need to know is that, yeah, I mean, being Latino, Latina, Latinx, Hispanic, that's an ethnic, that's ethnicity. That's not race. With that, being Latino is not a race. And we've all had to navigate through that identity.
Yeah, I mean, there's one human race. That's it.
Exactly.
You know, you have different ethnic backgrounds. That's it. And when someone's like, if someone were to ask, who are you or what are you? Do I self-identify with the country of origin, right? I mean, I was born here, but I'm Polish Peruvian, if you want to get down to it, or Polish Peruvian Italian, if you want to get, you know, all the different layers. So it's really about how someone chooses to self-identify.
If someone is confused, is there a right way to ask clarifying questions, or if they Like, are there things that people could say that would be like, don't say that? Or what advice would you have for folks who are like in the workspace or even in their private lives trying to
That's a good
navigate
question.
and not be offensive?
I mean, I've had it happen to me. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Yusuf.
No, I mean, I've had it happen to me in my office. I mean, I'm in corporate America, and I've had it that I've been in a room, and they've been like, well, we do have some Latinx representative, and I've stood up before and said, I'm actually Latino, Puerto Rican, or anything else, or you can call me whatever position. But I've had it happen, and the young lady actually came afterwards and spoke to me about it, and we talked, and she said, I'm sorry, Latinx, that's kind of, she's from Marquette, that's kind of what they use there. And I told her, no, I mean, it's up to anybody. You might have some other Latino that does not mind you calling them a Latinx, but I personally don't want to be called that. And I just think it's just up to whoever you're speaking to. You just have to keep that open mind and really just see who you're talking to. A lot of the younger people now, they don't mind Latinx. I think it's more of, I think people that are really involved in their community, like I'm also one of the presidents of Puerto Rican Festival. I'm involved in Puerto Rico, and like Andrea, Lucia, everybody on this board, you guys, everyone here is really helping their somehow in their community when it comes to Latinos and everything like that. I think it's just depends on the person. I don't think no one should rule the word out. I'm not completely against it. I personally always stand against it because I don't like it. But I wouldn't. I think it's use it. If that's what someone wants to be called, then use it. If it's nothing against it.
Okay, so I have a question about, what's sort of the title, like we've been having these conversations about what it's like to be how you are, how you show up in the room and how people respond to you. Like, what is it like in Milwaukee to be Hispanic, Latino, Latinx, Latina, in the world when you show up in a room? I mean, I know sometimes when I walk in a room as a Black person, I have these unconscious awarenesses of like how people are going to receive me, and I understand that experience. What is it for you when you come in a room, when you speak? Sometimes it's when you speak when people will know who you are once they hear your voice or your last name or whatever it is. Can you share what the experience has been, whether it's positive, negative, neutral? Just give some folks some insight. Lucia, I'll start with you and then we can kind of jump around as you guys want to.
Yeah, it's been interesting because I live it. So I've lived in Milwaukee since I got to the United States. We've been in Milwaukee. We were in Sheboygan as well. So the experience is just on small town Sheboygan versus Milwaukee, and now in the suburb in Oak Creek, definitely different, right? A lot of the time I'm the only one. If I'm in a church at the suburbs, obviously, you're like maybe one of two. Our corporation, obviously my corporation is in Milwaukee, so there's a few more Latinos in there. But I would say that the experience has varied in whatever setting I am in. So it's something that I have to think about. And, Sam talked about a little bit about this adaptability. I wrote it down, the adaptability of just how we navigate worlds, this bicultural life, right? I can tell you that if I am in a corporation and most of the audience is white male, my hands will not move as much, or my maybe my hair will look a little bit different, or because I know that I want my communication to be heard, and they are not used to it. They're not used to this level of energy and this level of, okay, if I'm going to say something, I'm going to interrupt somebody, because that's what Latinos do. Like, we interrupt because we care. Exactly. If a Latino is not interrupting you, that's a good sign that they're just saying something boring. But it is it is true though. But at the same time, when you are in that, okay, I'm the only one here, I often say that if it's a Thursday and Modern Family was on Wednesday night, I'm the latest episode. I have to go into that room thinking that they watch Modern Family the night before, and I'm just walking in with whatever, that was the only thing that they knew. I'm likely the first Latina that they meet. I'm likely the first Latina that, you know, that they've managed, so they've worked with, or that they have worked for. So I have to kind of manage that, and it just comes natural. Some people call it code switching. I mean, that's quite common, right? For people of color to navigate through that. I don't know if I answered your question, Corey.
Yeah, you did. You
Okay.
did. And you touched on code switching. Susan Bacon in the chat just asked that question. Is it code switching? The
Yep.
way when you alter your communication to be heard by someone, because naturally, you know, you think, no, they're not going to get this, or they not, you know, they won't respond well to it.
Yeah.
Or, you know, or in some settings, if you're considered too Latina or not Latina enough,
Mm-hmm.
you know, based on who you're working with, right? So if you're like if you're conditioned in certain corporate settings and you kind of follow that paradigm or that dynamic, and then you work with people of a Hispanic background, and you're still conditioned to kind of like a certain way of doing things in corporate America, you're not Latina enough. Like, you didn't reach out and make the phone call. You weren't, you know, embracing with a hug when you're a little bit more reserved. So it's always kind of like that fine line between the cultures. And me being, you know, Caucasian and Hispanic, you know, it's like, are you quemada? Are you burnt because you didn't know how to navigate between the two cultures appropriately? Or people didn't know if I was Latina first at looking at me, if I knew how to speak Spanish or not, you know, or how are they going to perceive me, right? So again, to your point, it's what are they going to hear? What are they going to see? And what's going to take dominance? And what is the ultimate objective of what I want that experience to be?
Mm-hmm.
I think walking into a room, for me, it's, I mean, there's a number of things, and there's fine lines between a few things, but there's a level of you know, preparation, and you come armed, you know, especially when you know you're going to be the only one that looks like you or has a last name, you know, like Maldonado, right? You come, you know, oftentimes overly prepared, because you know that you're going to have to, you know, speak up, or you're going to have to challenge certain things, that you might be a victim of microaggressions because of your last name, or, you know, your accent, or, you know, who you represent and what you represent. And the code switching, it's one of those I don't want to, some people call it a you know, use it as a deficit. Some people, I try to use it as a superpower, because I have the ability to do it, and other people can't, right? I can switch from English to Spanish in a heartbeat. I can talk about a wide range of topics because, you know, I've been socially and culturally exposed to a number of different situations that I'm comfortable speaking about. And so it's hard to define what, you know, what in one word or in one way, because I think we can talk about tokenism, right? Where you were brought into that room because who you are and what you represent versus, you know, you as an individual, as a professional. So there's multiple ways that one feels when walking into a room, and I think having those superpowers available and that wide range of experiences that prepare you for those microaggressions, that you can sort of be alert to how people are coming at you. It's good. And that same token, I mean, it's hurtful. A lot of this stuff we internalize, and some of us don't internalize it well, and over time it can really do a lot of damage to you as an individual. So I think outside of the circles, having a community like the panel here, having friends and colleagues, it's very important. And among other BIPOC, you know, communities, right? Black, Indigenous, and other folks of color, it's important for us to build those coalitions to talk about those things and you know, to be prepared when walking into a room.
For me, I've been really fortunate to have been in a lot of uncomfortable situations. Like I've been in, I still consider myself young, but it's changed a lot within the past few years. It came from when I first would go into some of these rooms where it would be all white folks, and I know I'm the only one coming in. The person that actually invited me explained this to me, and it like Mr. Maldonado said, it comes to the point where it really affects you, because it came to the point where I was going to some of these uncomfortable meetings that I was trying to figure out how I could kind of fit in there. So like one of the things that I would do, and it might be funny to you, I would go to Starbucks and buy a cup of coffee, even though I don't drink coffee. I'm not lying, and I just seen something on Facebook that it was saying that hold a cup of coffee and the police won't think anything. And I laughed because I said when I was first starting in the corporate world, I would go into these situations where I had not as many degrees as some of these people. I was already coming in with a little bit of a little bit of accent from Puerto Rico. I knew what I was talking about. I had put my time into the community, but I still was coming in very uncomfortable. And yeah, I was coming in with a coffee cup. I don't even drink coffee, but I felt that it made me like kind of fit in, and I'm kind of not no longer on that corner. No, I'm in this corner, even though I would hold this cup and I wouldn't even drink out of the cup. I've been in a lot of situations too where I've been in rooms like in actually just conferences like this where I've been the same person. They've put me in situations where they're constantly asking me all the black and brown questions, like just directly, all the black and brown, like I have all the answers. Hey, I know I'm the only brown guy here, but come on. But now I'm starting to see the change, and I think that's why it's so important with what's going on with a lot of these BLM, all these movements. Even if you disagree, it's starting to change things. And now when I walk into a room, even though it's wrong and it should have always been like this, now it's like, all right, let's hear what he's got to say. Oh, we have to now, kind of for policy. Policies are changing. We have to listen. We have to include this now. Well, okay, let's put on our list that we have a Hispanic guy in our meeting right now. So it's been tough, but a positive thing about it, it's been changing. I think with everything happening in the country. But yeah, unfortunately, myself and I think a lot of people I know have had to do the same thing. Even, you know, it's as crazy as it sounds, it's true. It's happening still.
I think the advantageous part of that is on how we approach it. You know, you could be the only one that looks like you and sounds like you, but I always capitalize on that opportunity because you know, and behind me there's 100, there's 1,000, there's a million of folks that look like me, and if I'm the one with the opportunity to change the dynamics and to represent that community, you better believe it, I'm going to take advantage of you bringing me.
It's a superpower.
Yeah.
It's a superpower. Just like you said, it really is.
And I'm gonna, yeah, I mean, what Alberto was saying is right. You know, I feel like I learned how to adapt many years ago, majoring in mechanical engineering, being the only Latina with white men. You know, you learn how to adapt. You learn how, you know, even though there's tokenism, it's like, what can I do to help others who, that access and that network is real, and being able to rely on that network for support when you're going through some of those situations, right, where they're challenging is priceless, right? To have those, you know, people that you can count on to get you through them and to help, you know, keep you help support your resiliency sometimes. But yeah, superpowers, Alberto.
I would, and I, you know, I would say, and I would say, you know, I always think of any changes and any of the conversations that we're having really is for our kids and for, you know, our younger generation. So I remember that I started supporting a group of, in my finance role, I was supporting a group of mostly white male, and for the first, I would say for the first 2 months, you know, I went into code switching every single day, and it was just exhausting. So I would go into like my little, you know, what I call my nourishing group, right? My Latinos and Latinas, and, you know, we would have lunch and I'd be like, okay, I'm recharged, and I would just go back out there, right? But I can tell you that, you know, after slowly and surely, right, I let them know who I was, and I just created that safe space that, hey, I can be a professional, I can be a Latina, I can be a leader in your organization, and I bring really good insights and diverse perspectives. Then I remember, like, fast forward 9 months after that, I had an all-employee meeting where 400 people with the same group that I was, that I code switched so much for like the first 2 months. And in 9 months, I walked into this all-employee meeting and I was doing a big presentation. And I walked in with this big hoops called jefa on each side. And it wasn't so much for me. It wasn't so much for me, but when I was putting those earrings on, and I said, I am doing this for the next Latina who's going to take over my job. That, if she's going to be wearing the big hair and she's going to, optically and also from that cultural roots, right? However she is going to show up, the next Latina or the next Latina, I'm doing this for her, right? And so it's not going to take her 2 months to not code switch as much, but it's going to take her 2 days, and then they are going to that exposure it is not a matter of exposure anymore. It's not a matter of, oh, I'm the first one, so I better watch out how I say, what I say, how I show up, when I show up, etc. So I think it's just more for hey, the next generation, for the next Latinos and Latinas and Latinx and Hispanics that are coming after that.
Lucia, let's shift gears a little bit. I mean, I see in the chat there's a lot of questions about, and this is my concern about, and when I was writing the marketing for this, is we can have this conversation and everybody has their perspectives, right? But I didn't want to present this like, you're going to get the answers for all brown people. And this is like, here's the Latino response to racism, because you can't do that because there's so much diversity within ethnic groups, racial groups, nationalities. I mean, let's talk about that a little bit, and whether or not you all wrestle with the individuality, collective. Do you feel a responsibility to your people? Lucia, you can follow up and like clean that question up for me.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, no, and that's a really good one, because when I'm the president of BRG at Rockwell, and one of the things that I always say is we're not here to represent Latinos. We come from 26 different countries. Our immigration stories are different. Some of them don't have immigration stories, but they experience the immigrant experience. Some people don't speak Spanish. Some of our Latinos don't speak Spanish. Some Latinos haven't even been to their home country. I mean, just the experience, the race, the diversity, and even where you grow up in those countries, it makes an impact. So let's talk about that Latinx or the Latino diversity, because it is confusing for our non-Latinx audience to say, wait a second, so I can't ask you about Mexico? First time I had a taco was in Milwaukee, by the way. Never had tacos in my life, but I was asked about tacos all the time. So let's talk about that diversity, that diversity within our team, and not just this team, but within our community, especially in Milwaukee. And also let's talk about this concept of, hey, you are representing, or are we connecting?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would say here, my experience, I'm first generation, so my mom was born in Peru, but I've gotten the question multiple times, are you Puerto Rican or are you Mexican? And I'm like, well, I'm neither, because the majority here in Milwaukee is either one, right? Mm-hmm. No offense to either. I have friends on both sides, even Maldonado, there are Mexican Maldonados and there are Puerto Rican Maldonados, and everyone's like, are you related? And I'm like, they're good friends. No. So, and even the skin tones, right? In Peru, they're, Afro-Peruvians all the way to very, very light-skinned. Same thing in Mexico and across the board in all the different countries. And I know, having a conversation with a friend who's Black, who's lighter-skinned, and we were having the conversation, I'm like, that's in the Hispanic Latino culture as well. And it was like, he had never considered that before. And so my mother-in-law was darker complected. My mom was lighter. My husband's a little bit darker. Like, oh, your kids look like you, or they're lighter. And I'm like, matter. It's genetics, however it works out. But I mean, you could even feel that sense of relevance or reverence or demonetization within the same ethnic group based on the color of your skin, where you were born, where you're from, where you lived. if you're first generation, if you speak Spanish or not. I mean, there's unapologetic Hispanic Latinos. There's others that don't self-identify because they don't speak the language, but that's your own personal journey. And that's how you have to self-identify and feel like you're giving yourself permission to own that, right? And if it's a spectrum and you learn your way through to build confidence in that regard, that maybe you don't speak Spanish, but you self-identify as Hispanic, there's nothing wrong with that. That's your journey, that's your identity. And you could learn Spanish and move around the quadrants if you want, but I would say it's a matter of learning how to self-insulate, because I didn't have my family here, they all live in Peru. And so kind of to Lucia's point, having that sense of camaraderie and support and nourishment from other Hispanic Latinos is something I didn't have growing up. So when I found my people, I would glob onto them because it was a different sense of family, a different sense of unity and camaraderie and support that you may not get from other people. So yeah, I would say it's very prevalent within the Hispanic Latino community here in Milwaukee. And I remember when I went to a national conference once, I think it was in San Antonio, and I was surrounded by Hispanic Latinos. I'm like, this feels weird. Like I wasn't used to how to experience that. I'm used to being the one of the few in a room, and then just being surrounded. It took me a moment to process, to be quite honest. So, but it was great. It was such an exhilarating feeling. But yeah, it's different where you go, and it's about a mindset of how you want to approach it and kind of embrace.
I definitely feel like there's I feel like there's a collective identity of being Latino, right? I think we're so diverse and we have so much, rich heritage, through in the culture, food, music, dancing. And when we get together, it is, it just feels so comfortable. I'm a third generation Latina with deep roots in Texas, and my parents were part of the Chicano movement. So I definitely have like a different identity and what that struggle, was about. But I'm also, first generation college student. And so it's, these differences, are just so unique. And yet there's this shared piece that we all have. And going to college and meeting my friends who are, Colombian or Puerto Rican, it's like, it was just amazing. And so there's this connection to community, I think, that just kind of happens naturally, despite the diversity and, different lived experiences.
Andreas, I'm sorry, somebody in the chat wants you to define Chicano.
So Chicano are Mexican Americans who, they're from Texas or California. And so we identify with, Chicano movement, which was led by Cesar Chavez. It was part of the labor rights movement. There are actually quite a few Latino leaders in Milwaukee who came, from Texas. Basically, they were migrant workers, and they came here and they were part of the movement, and they helped, lead some of those efforts to get more rights for the immigrant workers. So lots of leadership and history in Milwaukee with the movement.
Thanks. Alberto, go ahead.
Yeah, no, one of the things I really honor, and I think it's foundational in Latino culture, it's knowing your history and knowing your history well and internalizing your history. Because some of us could be ashamed of our history. Some of us can really embrace it. And as a Puerto Rican, when I look at my own, upbringing and my heroes are Black Puerto Ricans. My heroes are Clemente, Alfred Butch Lee, who took Marquette to the NCAA championship in 1977. It's Tito Trinidad, Black Puerto Ricans. So when you truly know your history and know what the makeup of your history and who makes up your culture, you can be a better person. Honestly, that's the bottom line. And so, for us as Puerto Ricans, knowing our history it's key, and knowing it to the T, and knowing that we come in different shapes and colors, but that there's that sense of pride that no one can deny, no one can take from us. So, my son, just a quick story, he's a freshman at UWM studying film. And when he was doing the college application, he asked me, Dad, what box do I check? Because, for ethnicity, he was Hispanic, Puerto Rican, right, Latino, but for race, it was white, black, or indigenous. And so I said, whoa, you just a little, we call it in Puerto Rico, un bombito, like a little slow pitch. I'm going to hit the one out of the park. And I said, let me give you a history lesson here and tell you why I would want you to check the indigenous and black box, because you're not white. And so, that's often what we're faced with. But if we don't know where we come from and what our history is, we cannot move forward. And so, when we talk about black and brown, I have no issues, because I am all, I am proud of being all of that.
So with me, I came here from Puerto Rico when I was around 11 years old. We were one of the first families here. Just like Alberto said, I mean, my dad is black. He's from Puerto Rico, but my dad is black. My brother's black. I'm the lightest one pretty much in my family. And as I got older, I kind of, I ended up running into situations where I started finding my other part of my family, and they were even darker than my brother. So I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? And I started researching, and I actually ended up asking one of my older siblings, started going to questions. She's about 80 years old, and my great-great-great-grandma was actually from Haiti. She actually had drawings of some of the marks she had as a slave on her arm. And it was something that kind of like, it woke me up, like, whoa, like this is completely different than I thought. But as I went through that process in my life and I started researching, like Mr. Maldonado said, kind of the history and where my ancestry going all the way to Haiti. And if I keep following it, it'll go all the way to the Congo and Africa and all that other stuff. But it changed my perspective on my life. It made me do serious things like, like I'm part of the president of the Puerto Rican Festival. When the hurricane happened, my heart was like, I got to get to Puerto Rico, and I ended up leaving. And a lot of people didn't understand, why are you crazy? There's a hurricane. Why'd you go with the Red Cross? But it was that, just knowing that history and knowing where I come from and knowing that I'm just not Puerto Rican, like my title says, has kind of not only changed the way I see life and how hard I work, because now I feel like I got to work harder than everyone, how I raise my son, and just how I am even on social media. It's affected my life in a big deal. Yeah, I agree completely with Mr. Maldonado and what everyone's saying. It really makes who I am, knowing that history. And I think it helps me to be able to explain it to other people that don't understand, especially people listening to us like right now.
I have I don't know how many of you guys know Gennaro Baez he runs HR for Milwaukee County. He and I always talk about, he's from the East Coast. And so over there, black and brown is like tight, and Lucia and I were talking about that. Like, these communities are so intertwined and interconnected, and Milwaukee, just geographically where we live, is so segregated that I don't know that we feel the same oneness. I mean, I guess to some degree I can speak for myself as a black person. I feel it because I feel similarities between the stories and the struggles and the cultures, and I feel like we can get in the room and have a conversation and there's like a knowing. But I don't think that I necessarily feel like I didn't grow up with my neighbors speaking Spanish. I took Spanish in school because I wanted some kind of kinship or connection, but I don't feel that tight knit black and brown in Milwaukee the way that, like, Gennaro was like, he's like, what's wrong with y'all?
I blame that on the 16th Street Bridge, on the 27th Street Bridge, and on the 35th Street Bridge. I blame that on those three bridges and the separation that we have between blacks and the browns. And it's a really big deal in Milwaukee. And I think this is the time where we actually have to, like we're doing now, is talk about this. Because yeah, we're all black and brown when we're together, but when we're in a group full of white people and stuff, we're in a room full of white folks, we're together. But when it's a room of just Latinos and blacks, we're all different. We're everywhere. It's not a unity thing anymore. And I think that's one of the biggest issues that we have, not just in Milwaukee, but in the corporate world and everything, in communities. You have neighbors living right next to each other in Milwaukee that one's black and one Latino, and they don't even think that they're anything at all. They look at each other as completely different beings, which is not true.
And I mean, I can say that for so in my company, I work with our ERG, our BRG, the Latinx Professional Network. I probably meet with the African American Professional Network in a bi-monthly, and then we have some activities that if it's for career development for Latinos only, we bring in our Black and our Black professionals as well. And to me, it's a matter of partnership in the numbers. If we isolate ourselves, if we work in silos, we're not going to be as strong as working together. And there's a lot of challenges, not the same. There's a lot of challenges that are similar in terms of, equity gaps and leadership, representation and exposure, and what our kids are seeing, and who they are seeing, being in the sense of, teachers or community leaders, etc. There's so many things that our Black and brown kids need to have, that is up to us leaders to make sure that we are acting united. Also respecting the challenges that our Black brothers and sisters go through just by walking into a room and just being Black, right? I mean, that's heavy stuff. But we need to be united, and I know that that's something that I have tried to do, or we have tried to do in our place of influence at work, and trying to do that as well, and a little bit on the community as well. But I agree. I mean, there seems to be a little bit of a siloed, like, there's a zip code and there's another zip code, and I think that we're going to make more progress if we join a little bit more.
I think the partnership is important, and I also think it's important to continue to understand what the unique challenges or opportunities might be, within each group, still working in partnership and collaborating, but also, sometimes we see data is aggregated at this high level, and it's like you can't even understand what's happening, underneath that. So it's like disaggregate the data and let's understand what's happening, with our own communities, and continue to move forward together as well. So I'm saying, partner, and let's continue though to understand, our unique opportunities and figure out how we can all move together forward,
Yeah, and I would add to that both what Lucia and Andrea have mentioned. It's also a sense of understanding how we're choosing to show up, right? So it's a sense of cultural humility as well as cultural competency. So you can't have one without the other. There's observable facts, and then there's knowing more about the culture and the person uniquely, right? And so Cora may be familiar, but there's a rule that I go through, that I teach my kids through, called the platinum rule, right? And it's an evolution from the golden rule. So the platinum rule is you treat others how they want to be treated, right? You're not projecting your own unique needs, wants, and goals onto somebody else, but you're seeing that other individual for who they are. No matter if they're Black, brown, yellow, green, blue, purple, whatever, right? But you're recognizing for who they are, and moving through that kind of as a sense of discovery, a fun adventure to find those common points. And there's so much more that we have in common than we have that's different. So everyone wants to live, in my viewpoint, a successful life where they want to leave this world a better place than how they found it. How we do it is different. How we get there is different. But essentially, our conditioning, our ethnic background, our experiences, our attitudes, our values, that's what makes us unique. And truly, to the points being made before, it's knowing where you've been, what's been your culture, leveraging it, honoring it, using it as a legacy, and taking it forward to have others broaden their exposure and their understanding. And once you know better, then you have the opportunity to do better and to put it into practice.
Let's talk a little bit about, there's a lot of people in the chat that are asking so many questions about resources, what they can do, things to tell their children, how to manage, workforces, to be considerate, not offensive, to elevate, learning in a way that is respectful and makes a lot of sense. Let's talk a little bit about our allies, right? So whether they be, Black, brown, or white, folks in the workplaces and the schools, and if there was a call to action or things that you want people to be working on or thinking about right now, what would some of those things be? What would you like to see happen right now?
I think, Adam, So I always go back to, you have to understand the experience. A lot of times, I mean, for our allies, right? And Corey and you and I were talking about this. A lot of times we do in volunteer events, right? And we do it to our kids. And then we go into our Latinx schools and then we start talking about how they can be and how big, how high they can go and how they can own business. And it's like, hold on a second. Do we understand that some of our kids in our city are wrestling with being, with having parents who are undocumented, and that every day they come into into school, and they don't know if they're going to see their parents when they come back, when there's ICE raids or something, right? Like, why are we like talking about entrepreneurship if like there's some heavy stuff going on in these kids' minds? When we talk about college students, right? When it's the idea of, when we pick up a resume and we want to hire somebody, do we understand the experience of the college student, of a Latinx college student, when, internships are not something that they come by very easy, because they probably have to have a lot of family duties that they have to fulfill, or in their small business or whatnot, and they have a whole lot of fear because of just economically they might not how are they paying for their bills, in other words. So do we understand that? Do we understand in the professional sense, when we're trying to give that next job or that next role, do we understand the experience of a Latinx professional that is in their mid-30s or mid-40s, and when they are going for that interview, or they are talking or networking, etc., when culturally humility is part of our culture? Like, it's very hard for us to talk about ourselves. We can elevate our community. I can elevate Yusef, I can elevate Samantha, but I sit in front of somebody and it's like I talk about myself. That's uncomfortable. Do we understand the experience? So I think that as a call to action, is like, we have to understand that experience of that person sitting across in front of us, or the student that is that we're trying to provide some mentorship to. We have to understand their experience, because as everybody heard, there's just a sense of diversity in the Latinx community, and in Milwaukee, or also in Milwaukee, that not one experience is the same for everybody. So I think for the Latinx professional specifically, we have to address the experience. That's it.
It's all about experience. I'm going to put the conversation on hold really quickly, just out of respect for time. We are right at 3 o'clock, so there are participants who have to jump off. There are also panelists that might have to jump off. Samantha, I know you have a meeting to go to. At this point, this has been happening the whole time. We'll go over 10 or 15 minutes because we have so many questions. So if you can stay as a panelist, please stay with us. Samantha, I know you have to go, so thank you so much for your contributions. You got a lot of love in the chat for everything that you've said. Thank you for all your work. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me today. I'm glad to speak with friends and some exposure and some enlightenment, and hopefully this was helpful. So thank you for the opportunity.
Okay.
Thank you, Sam.
All right. So if the rest of you can stay, we'll follow up on Lucia's comment and my question that kind of sparked their comment. And then we have my colleague, Marjorie Yoshida, is in the chat. So she's been looking at all the questions in the chat and in the Q&A, and there's a lot. So we'll try to do a rapid response, and I won't keep you that long, I promise. Give me 10 or 15 minutes. Lucia was talking about the experience of people and understanding that experience. Do you feel like people are comfortable in schools and workplaces kind of getting into that? I kind of think sometimes, especially in workplaces, people try to stay out of, anything that might be personal and just forge ahead with this very business-like and almost sterile approach. But I think things have to change. Things have got to change now.
Yeah. Just recently, a colleague, a very dear colleague of mine, shared with me, we were talking about, and she said, allies are great, and we welcome allies to the various movements, to the various communities, especially these days. It is beautiful to see people coming together in pro of different things that are happening in our society. But I think it's better to be an accomplice, because an accomplice, removing the actual act of committing a crime, right? Not to be accomplice of committing something wrong, but being accomplice in the context of helping one another, right? An ally can say, well, I know about this culture, I know enough to feel like I'm an ally, but I think being an accomplice gives you a more actionable piece there, that now you're helping that community, you're embracing that community, you're actively engaged with that community, versus putting a sign in your front yard that says BLM and call it a day, right? Taking it a step beyond. And I think that's what's going to transform our communities and how segregated we are as a city. It's taking that extra step to becoming accomplice, to one another, and say, you know what, I'm going to take it a step beyond. I'm going to do more than just being an ally, and have a greater impact.
And I think, everyone plays a role, right? So like allies, it starts in your home. It starts in all levels of an organization, and, these institutions that are so ingrained in their, the way they do things. So when we talk about a region of choice, it's not just attraction, it's retention. We had 2,700 area college graduates, Latino college graduates, right? What are we doing to give them the access to the better jobs? What are we doing for adults that might want, higher paying jobs? What are the upskilling opportunities? Latinos work, we're working, but there's a $20,000 difference in what Latinos make in Milwaukee County versus what white people make. So we need to be intentional, and we need to be, we need to collaborate and figure out, like, how do we change things and change things quickly, because things have been moving very slow in terms of progress, as we all see. So yeah, let's work together and do more.
I think the best thing you can do for anyone that's listening is get a Latino friend, start conversations, get around Latino people, join Latino Facebook groups, and just stop seeing us as different people. I understand we have to talk about culture and we have to talk about our differences, but we are all humans, just like I'm the guy sitting behind me or in front of me. We all have the same, whatever jobs you're doing, we don't have to be seen as something different, or they're Latinos, I'm not gonna understand this. Or he's Latino, he's gonna react differently. We're human beings just like everyone else. I mean, get a Latino friend, understand the culture through those friends, but also understand that let our work speak for us. We might be Latinos, but our hard work and our passions, it's what's really it's gonna show you how you should treat us. Don't just treat someone a specific way because they have some type of Latino, Latinx, Hispanic title. Stop seeing us a little more different. Stop being so scared and holding that wall in front of you. Like, maybe I shouldn't say Latinx. Maybe I should say it. See what happens. Talk to people. Stop holding back. Stop hiding behind your computer.
Just say it.
Yeah, stop hiding behind your computer or behind your cubicle or behind your computer screen, and just say it. See what happens. Talk to people. That's the great thing about Latinos. We're open to change. We're open to growth, and we're open to conversation. So it's a win-win situation when you're dealing with Latino.
And I like that, Yusef, because one thing we did a 360 with a bunch of Latino leaders at work, and I casually asked them, I'm like, what are the 3 top qualities that people have recognized in you? And this is based on a 360 that we had them fill out. And the top 3 was relationship building. Like if we think about Latinos and our communities, where we, and I mean, Yusef, Alberto, Andrea, and Corey as well. I mean, who raised us? It wasn't just our mom and our dad. I got yelled at by my uncles. I got talked to by my neighbors. The community and the ability for us to form relationships is just incredible. So I would say, yeah, get your Latino friend, but don't have your Latino friend represent all Latinos, because I don't represent all Latinas. And I don't represent all Latinos either, but they can definitely help you make that connection, the connection with other professionals, the connection with other students or with the community or whatever you want to explore. And the best way to get us Latinos is through food. We'll get you to the best spots. We'll get you to the best spots in the city to eat some arroz with something, right? And that is, and will help. I think that is consistent. We can help with the connection, not representation, but we can help with that connection.
Or go to some of these events. There's a lot of cultural events,
Yes.
especially in cities like Milwaukee. Right now, yeah, it's COVID, but there are every type of festival. There's a million Mexican festivals,
Puerto Rican festival.
a million Colombian. Yeah, and a lot of people reach out. You know, we do the Puerto Rican festival, and
That's amazing.
everyone, and they reach out. People will literally Facebook me and message me and say, "Is it okay for me to go? I'm a white person. Hey, is it okay for me? I'm a black person." I'm serious. This happens to me the week before the festival every year. These are hundreds of people, and I'm like, "Whoa! You going to German Fest, right? You're going to Polish Fest, right?
Mexican fiesta.
Let's come. Yeah, let's go out to these festivals, try the food, talk to people. You will be surprised on how people feel honored that you're actually coming down and asking them a word that you don't even understand. They're not, you're just gonna, just get out, try. That's all. Stop hiding behind this wall that you're gonna offend someone. That's what I think.
Okay, we got Marjorie Yoshida. You ready, Marjorie? You got a legal pad full of questions, I'm sure.
This first question is interesting because I'm 100% Japanese, but I don't speak Japanese and I don't cook Japanese. But does that make me less Japanese, you know? So the question was, as someone that's in their 50s, there was a divide in the Hispanic community growing up between Hispanics that spoke Spanish and those that did not. Feel that divide still exists?
You know, there's definitely, here's what I will say, because Spanish is my second language, and as a third generation Latina, I grew up at a time when, you know, it was before the Latino explosion. So, you know, my parents grew up, and when they spoke Spanish in school, they were punished.
Mhm.
So, you know, very little appreciation for, you know, what it meant to be bilingual and the benefits of it. So it took some extra work on my part to learn Spanish, and I will admit I'm totally embarrassed when I speak Spanish. But I need to. So anyway, we have to understand that with these different lived experiences, there is going to be an acculturation process for the generations that follow. And so I think it's important to try to, you know, stay close to heritage and culture and, you know, the family, and try to keep those language traditions up, so that you know, continue to value that and hopefully don't lose it. But I will tell you, my kids are growing up in Mequon. And they go to a school that is not as diverse as I would like it to be. But, you know, we're trying to do, you know, they have no choice, but they have to take Spanish class, right? Like, you're not going to learn French, you're going to learn Spanish. So whatever it is that we can do to help them, and knowing that it is possible to keep that connection to language. And my husband's Peruvian. So every time we go to visit his family, that's all we hear is, you know, Spanish, and we get to eat the amazing food. And my head hurts sometimes because I'm like, okay, I got that. But yeah, I think it's important to keep that connection to language, you know, when you can, and to, again, respect these differences too, and how we all, you know, if you can keep it, it's great to keep it.
I think there's a even greater divide between new arrivals and folks who have been here for a couple of generations. I experienced that when I arrived in '89, and then when you go back to Puerto Rico, or, you know, you're not Puerto Rican, fully Puerto Rican, because they view you as the Anglo Puerto Rican, or as we call it in Puerto Rico, the New Yorkers, right? And so you don't feel like you're part of the makeup of your culture here or in the island. So I think there's a divide that happens with newcomers versus folks who have been settled here for a while. So it took me a while to understand that and to sort of fully integrate myself with those differences, and then understand when I go back to visit family in Puerto Rico, how they view me, because, you know, I left the island, and now it's been 30 years since I left, and you know, yeah, you need to get some sun on you, and there are all these nuances and things that like come with being a new arrival to either place.
Okay, Marjorie, what else do you see? That was a good one.
Are there stereotypes and issues between various Latin and Hispanic groups, and how does that affect things?
I would say yes. I mean, there are. I think that there is also. I know in the African American community or with the Black community, we have a colorism. I think there is also racism in our countries. I can tell you that that also within countries, right? Or between countries and in South America and Latin America, there's still wait a second, I'm not Mexican, like, let's face it, all the Latinos here at least in this panel, have been called Mexican. But I mean, or even when somebody is, I've heard this, right? When somebody's from Mexico and they are from Guatemala, somebody else is from Guatemala, is like, the better country is Mexico. I mean, there's just a lot of that, and I think that I probably don't see it as much here in my work setting or even in my community. I mean, granted, I'm one of the few in my neighborhood, but I know that it exists.
I see it a lot.
Yeah.
I see it a lot. I think there's a big division with Latinos right now. Not just, I think the biggest one is Puerto Ricans and Mexicans, but I think there's a big division with a lot of different people. It's even now, a joke that's been going on for years. When you tell a Puerto Rican, are you Mexican? And Puerto Rican goes, oh my God, I'm not. How could you call me that?
Yeah.
And I think that it's a problem because it's dividing our community,
Yes.
especially in Milwaukee, where Milwaukee's huge.
Divided.
But this is the South Side where most Hispanics live. This is the North Side where most of the Blacks live, and this is where the white folks live. And it's kind of a separation that we need to come together. The support is just not there. I think that the people want it to be there. I think there's the effort between the Latinos, Mexican, and Puerto Ricans coming together, because you'll see it. You'll get into a room and it's like, all right, we should work together, or should we? Okay, let's do it. And then it starts happening, but there's always that wall before you actually start the process. And I think that's one thing that once we bring the Latinos together, then we can actually start educating everyone else on how we can end some of these problems. But yeah, it is a big problem right now, especially in the Milwaukee community. People are working on it. There's a lot of great organizations that are putting things together. There's a lot of amazing events bringing us together. A lot of different areas in Milwaukee that have made their areas just specifically to bring us together. A lot of amazing murals that actually have us all together now. But it is a problem that we need to actually talk about more.
I think that there's like that sense of nationalism, right? Like I'm Ecuadorian and I'm from whatever country you are. But the problem is that, to your point, it's dividing us, and we're not that big in numbers anyways. So it's okay to live in that paradox in which we can be the same, but we can be very different as well. Because that is our superpower, right? That diversity is also our superpower, and we can do the same thing at the same time. We can be the same, but we can also be different. And I think the wisdom or the power comes in when we learn to live in that paradox.
Let me ask a question about that. Is that from what you've seen? Is it fueled by white perception of each country?
No, I don't think so.
No, I think it's
just in pride. I think it comes in that pride that you have
the bandera, the flag, like we represent this flag, and
Okay.
Yeah, I really don't think it's something that's on purpose to offend anyone. I think it's just that pride that you have behind your culture and what you represent. I think that's where that comes from.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Marjorie.
And with me, just real quick, I've been blessed in my life. I came here in Puerto Rico when I was 9, I think it was about 10 years old. I lived on 15th and Beecher. I didn't know any English when I got here. My mom has horrible English. Don't tell her I said that, but she's still been here long. And my dad, the same thing. But I grew up on the south side, but I went to schools on the north side. I went to Custer High School. I went to all black schools. So I was the Spanish kid that knew no English at all. And when I got done with high school, which was an all black crowd, I went to UW Whitewater. So I go from the Spanish area to the black area to all white folks at UW Whitewater. And it's been amazing experience. It's helped me have different point of views.
Just that, yeah.
You know, so it's been a real crazy ride for me. And that's kind of where my opinions comes from. Like Lucia said, we're all different, but that's where, just to put that out there, it's,
Marjorie.
That ability to adapt, and that's what people need to know then about you, because if they understand your experience.
No, about you too, and about Andrea down here.
Right,
too,
but it's like that when you
that,
know the experience, when you know that Lucia came here at 17 years old without speaking any English and left everything, like, and I was like, oh, I'm a Latina. What does that mean in the United States? Is different. Like those experiences have made us extremely adaptable, and that's what organizations need to know. That's what our leadership, the people who are missing that seat at the table, they need to know that about Latinos, that we bring a multicultural, multiracial, greater extent of adaptability, excellent ability to develop relationships, and that passion that is like, if we don't do it with our heart, it's just like we won't do it, right?
Okay, Marjorie, let's give, you got one more?
One more?
One more zinger.
People of color, everyone's been grouped together lately. Do you have any issues being included in this term, people of color?
You know,
I don't.
I feel like
I don't.
anytime that we can talk to specific groups when we're talking about specific issues, I think that can only help the conversation, right? I'm just saying this, you know, I went through an incident with anyway, I won't give you too much detail, but anyway, call out Latinos when we need to, right? When we can make sure that they are, you know, fully represented, I think it's good to do that. It's helpful. That's me.
Yeah, with me, I don't get offended at all, because my brain is starting to change a little bit. So I see black and brown. I have some white people that are on my black and brown list where I feel like they're dealing with a lot of situations that we are, either because of their financial status, or is it because some type of barrier they have in their life. And so to me, it's like, okay, you want to call us black and brown? Well, I guess we're the ones that are going through the issues here. We're all together here. So to me, it doesn't bother me at all. I think it's actually the beginning of unity.
Unity.
But you said black and brown and not people of color.
Yeah, black and brown people of color. Yep.
Yeah,
I think it's just that it's unifying. I don't think that it's intended to like separate us. And that was to the earlier comment. We need to collaborate. We need to form a coalition also with our because there's black Latinos too.
yes.
And you know, we need to form those coalitions, and whatever, let them, you know, put the you know, more boxes, whatever. At the end of the day, the numbers are going to speak on their own. The fact that we are one of the fastest, you know, ethnic groups that are growing, the fact that I was reading the statistics, about a third of our states in the United States are already the majority of the kids are non-white. So, you know what? Let them get hung up. You know, there's going to be a few that are going to get hung up by, okay, is it black and brown? Is it people of color? Is it? At the end of the day, we got to get ready. We got to get ready. And that's where our leadership is going to start showing, in our community, at our work, in our education system, in our health care. I mean, in anything that our people are experiencing, we have to really get ready. It's coming. That's a fact.
Because the black and brown kids are so much of our population, and in Milwaukee, it's like, this is literally the future.
Yes.
And we got to take care of them, and we got to set them up for success, and whatever it takes to do that, we got to do it. We got to do it.
Oh, he's wearing a mask.
I know all you all.
Gotta get going, ladies.
Listen.
All right, bye, Yusef.
So we
I
got.
appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yusef. The participants that are still here, please, love notes in the chat box. I always share the chat box with the panelists and to the to the full panel and the panelists that remain. I couldn't be more. I'm beaming today. I'll be like on clouds for the rest of the day. This is a great conversation, and I'm so glad that you all were able to participate and be so open and transparent. And Lucia, thank you for being my boss, my co-boss here on the
the co-boss
on the call. You're great, Andrea. You're great. Thank you so much, both of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, lady. We'll talk
Thank you,
soon.
Lucia. Thank you, Marjorie.
Nos hablamos. Gracias.
All right, Fuelers, remember every Thursday we're here from 2 to 3 p.m. If you haven't been to the Fuel website, make sure you go to the Fuel website. If you're not members yet, now's a great time for you to take advantage of either your employer sponsor membership or a regular membership through the Fuel site. Check us out. We're the same place where you register for this event. Thank you, guys.
Gracias. Hasta luego. Ciao, ciao. Bye.
Bye, guys.